So that was one epic Oregon-Ohio State football game. I got to tell you, as a guy who does not have a bone in that fight, who already watched his team get destroyed by the number one team in the country, I have no qualms about what I'm going to do come Sunday morning when we got to talk about the top 25, because what Oregon was able to do is what many thought they were capable of doing when they first entered the Big Ten, given the trajectory that they had been on, given what Oregon had shown in the Dan Lanning era. And we knew that Ohio State going into Autzen was going to be the first real test of the $20 million roster and the all-star caliber offense and defense that they fielded at a stadium that seats just over 60,000 people, but was one of the loudest stadiums in the sport, full stop. Certainly one of the loudest stadiums seating under 80,000. And they were going to be heard. They were absolutely going to be heard. And every time I thought Ohio State was getting ready to take this game by the throat, Oregon came up with a play. And for the second time in 3 years, yes, 2021, we're talking about an Oregon team that did not have its dominant defensive playmaker, Jordan Burch this year, Kayvon Thibodeau in Columbus, getting a W against the team that we think is going to win the Big Ten championship. Well, again, Oregon decided, no, we might be new to the Big Ten, but this is also a new era of college football in as far as we are concerned. So we're going to take Will Stein, we're going to take Tosh Lapoy, and we're going to take Riverboat Gambling Dan Lanning, the kind of man who calls fourth down plays like he is hitting on 19, and we're going to go win 32-31 at Autzen against what I thought was the number one team in all of college football. No, that team is now Oregon. They have won 34 of their last 35 games at Autzen, which is another way of saying you don't want them at home in the playoff. That is now the best home field advantage in the sport. Full stop. When Ohio State can go there, and when you can obviously see that there's a challenge, but it's not the Oregon team that we had thought they were going to be. It's more like the Oregon team that's rounding into form, right? Actually, I think it's more important to say Oregon has taken the trajectory that I was given to Ohio State, right? All the way to this game, I'd say Ohio State has not played a sharp football game end to end yet, and yet they were still stunting on people. They were absolutely destroying people. When they got to Oregon, it felt like they were going to have to play their best football, and there were times when we saw it. There were times when you saw Emeka Egbuka late making a play. The stupid PI call that was on Jeremiah Smith. I get that y'all are saying that Oregon fans be like, he pushed off. I don't think it was that big a deal, right? I think the man got separation. If you can't do that in college football or any football, then we're not playing football anymore. What are we, two-hand touching out here? Can't put your hands on nobody no more? Y'all afraid of it? Meanwhile, Tez Johnson going, nah, I got it, dog. I got it. And then I get to see Evan Stewart going, you know what, Denzel Burke? It's your turn. Denzel Burke, we going to be picking on you tonight. Denzel Burke, who claims he got a first-round grade, came back because he ain't got no gold pants, no Big Ten championship, no national championship. We're going to come after you. I think Denzel Burke going to have some explaining to do. That's what I think. I think that a lot of folks going to be asking questions like, really, one-on-one versus Evan Stewart, you going to get cooked? Versus Tez Johnson, you going to get cooked? Is that what's going to happen? To say nothing of what Terrence Ferguson was able to do, outstanding when they had getting in the ball. And then you're talking about Dillon Gabriel being Dillon Gabriel, right? The same running play that he made to get in the end zone against Ohio State, he made last year against Texas. I don't know what it is that he's got to prove to the NFL, but all I know is where that dude goes, winning seems to follow. And that is the highest praise I can give any quarterback at any level. Are you a winner? Because if you are a winner, winning usually follows you around. And they are undefeated. He went 23 of 34 for 341 yards through 2 TDs. Jordan James had another outstanding game, 23 rushes for 115 yards and a TD. And, of course, Evan Stewart just eating up what I thought was, and what still might be, but what I thought was the best secondary in all of college football, right? Full stop. Like, that's what we thought it was. The spread was 3.5. Ohio State was the favorite going in there trying to get the W. If they got the W on the road, it would have been definitive mark for them to be the number one team in the country. As it is, no, that is Oregon. Oregon has all of it. They get to beat Chip Kelly. They get to beat Ryan Day. They get to beat this roster. And now we really have to have that discussion that Ohio State fans have wanted to have about Will Howard for some time. Doesn't matter if the man went 28-35, 326, 2 TDs, and no picks. It matters that when it was Will winning time, Will didn't do no winning. That's what it was. I'd been saying for some time that it felt like Will Howard needed to just be Craig Krenzel, which is another way of saying be mobile when you got to be mobile, but for the most part, exist to hand this ball to Quinshon Judkins, to hand this ball to Travion Henderson, and throw this ball to Jeremiah Smith, throw this ball to Megabuka on down the line, right? He did a lot of that. He didn't do enough of it. We're talking about really Travion Henderson coming up short on a play that I thought they had to have, even as he was a home run hitter. Jeremiah Smith still had a great game, 9 catches for 100 yards and TD. I thought, again, the push-off was lame. The PI on it, I should say, is lame. And then you're getting into the spot where you got the ball and you got an opportunity to win, and Oregon's defense, Tosh Lafleur, they step up and they stop you. That's what it was, man. Both offenses were humming. 496 yards offense for Oregon, 467 for Ohio State. Both quarterbacks threw for 300 yards. Had a 100-yard rusher over there on Oregon, had 87, I think, and 10 carries, by the way. It was just gaudy for Travion Henderson. I expect this to be the Big Ten championship game. I really do. I expect that to happen. What I saw from Penn State earlier today, I don't see it. I don't see it. You were on the ropes. You were down 20-6 to a USC team that we know is not good. That's a 7-5 team over there, right? We're going to keep Penn State in the top 5 because we gotta, right? It's Penn State and they're undefeated. But if you put Indiana in Penn State's clothes, you would have Indiana at number 4 in your college football rankings. Like that's what it would be. We're just respecting the jersey. We're respecting the name, the brand. We're not really throwing the weight behind it that we would otherwise. That's one of the reasons why we can move in Oregon to number 1. We know what the brand is. And we know that Dan Lanning is out here trying to take everything from everybody all the time. Meanwhile, Ryan Day is going to have some questions he got to answer about all of this that they gave him, because that's the thing about Ohio State. If you tell Ohio State fans and Ohio State alumni and the brass that you need this much money and you need these coaches to win, what's going to happen is they're going to find a way to get you what you need. But if you don't go win with what they got you, it's just not going to look good, right? That's why we started the season going, you have to be you have to win the Big Ten championship, you have to win a national championship, you're Ryan Day. Goes without saying, I think at this point you have to win November 30th against Michigan. But now your back is up against it because now we're down to Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana as the last undefeated teams in the Big Ten, and we all know who we're favoring when it comes to that sort of calculus, right? I think if you want to leave Texas at number 1, I'm not really going to fight you, but I am going to say that Oregon has the best win in college football, but by sheer fact that, A, Georgia won by just 10 against Mississippi State earlier tonight. Talk about them a little bit later. And I'm looking at an Alabama team that doesn't know if it's coming or going. And we got to talk about Tennessee. So let us talk about Tennessee. Let's get into what the hell is going on with that offense. Because for the first 3 games of the season, they looked unstoppable. They were moving the ball and scoring on everybody they played, right? Including North Carolina State, who I realize is not very good, but you get my point here, right? It's not Chattanooga. It's not the Mocs. Then you get Oklahoma, who had a defense good enough to stop you doing what you've done to everybody else, which is destroy, right? Just go up and down the field. You win that game 25-15. You take the bye week, and you get an Arkansas team that I've said is better than their record and had played pretty damn good defense and needed some things to go right for them on offense, particularly Taylor Green playing well. And that happened. Taylor Green went 19-26 for 266, and they got enough out of the run game to win that game and upset Tennessee at home. But one of the other reasons why that was able to happen is Tennessee couldn't move the football because Travis Williams was dialed in. That Arkansas defense was dialed in. Now you have Tennessee playing a grudge match against Florida at home, Neyland. It's supposed to be a get-right game. That game goes into overtime, and you're not able to score. Like, we're talking about 17 up against a Florida team that did everything possible to shoot itself in the foot, so much so that there ain't no ammo left in the pistol. You know, like you don't have Grand Merps. You have DJ Lagway out there looking cheeks, and you still can't quite separate from this team. I have to look at what Nico Iamaleava was not doing and start asking some real questions. You cannot have this kind of play from your quarterback, from your offense, and expect to win an SEC championship game, let alone a national championship. Dylan Sampson feels like the only guy over there that you can trust to go get you some yardage. But if you can't throw the ball running this uptown defense, uptown offense you got, uptown being up-tempo, you need to go back to what you can do well. And if that is just running the football and going to play action, does Josh Heupel have that in the bag? Does Alex Glesh? Does he have? Does Joey Hazel have that in the bag? You know, Joey Hazel, man. We used to make jokes about Joey Hazel as a backup quarterback at Oklahoma. Now he is one of those dudes on the sideline, right? Going to be in line for a head coach job. Good for him. You got to ask questions of Tennessee now. And you have to ask questions of Tennessee now because they're going to play an Alabama team who looks about as good as they are, which is not good at all. I don't have Alabama as a top 10 team. I haven't seen a top 10 Alabama since they beat Georgia. And even then, you let a 28-0 lead slip to where you need to come from behind to win it late. And then you gave up 40 to Vanderbilt. And then you damn near got beat by a South Carolina team that has the most college offense that we have seen all year. You got a quarterback that can barely throw the football. You got a running back that they should be handing the rock. And you got a defensive front that can get home, but you can't score and you can't really be counted on to consistently move the ball. South Carolina pissed away an opportunity to beat Alabama in Bryant-Denny. Felt like that's what Florida did against Tennessee today. So now you have Alabama and Tennessee, who are supposed to be using both of these games to get right games for the game next week, with two quarterbacks that don't feel sharp, with run games that feel aight, with some wide receivers that can go, maybe two on each side, and defensive fronts that can get after each other, but will they? I trust Tennessee's defensive front more than I trust Alabama's defensive front. But that's not saying much now, is it? You know, like 4 takeaways against South Carolina, and that game came down to the final seconds. Now, I get that one of those takeaways was at the end, but that's still 3-1. And Jalen Milroe tried to throw you a pick six, did not succeed this time. Did end up throwing you the ball again. Did end up giving you the intentional grounding for the safety. Still can't go win this game. Right now, the only team that we can trust in the SEC is Texas. I'm looking for Alabama or Tennessee to try to change our mind about that next week. Because there's nothing that I've seen here that leads me to believe that either one of them is as elite as we thought even 2 weeks ago. Now we are talking about an SEC that is really getting to eat each other alive. And we're back into the conversation about how many teams are going to get in the college football playoff from each of these super conferences. At one point, I'm thinking 4 apiece. Now we're back down to 3 apiece, especially if you get some of these other programs like Iowa State, BYU continue to go undefeated. And at the time we start talking about this, Colorado had a lead against Kansas State. We'll see if that holds up, right? We'll talk about that later. I'm also looking at LSU and Ole Miss being in a dogfight. Who knows who's going to win that game by the end of this show? We'll have a definitive answer later. But I think that while we're talking about this, I think there's room for Ohio State to be the one-loss non-Big Ten champion getting in the college football playoff based on what they did against Oregon today, provided that Oregon runs the rest of the table. And you know what? When you look at Oregon's schedule and you begin to ask yourself, okay, who else do we trust to perhaps give them a ball game? Not beat them, but just give them a ball game. I think you got to go a ways. So you got Purdue next week. That's a Friday game that they're probably going to win. Then you got Illinois. Okay, they could challenge. Michigan, ain't no way. Maryland, probably not. Wisconsin, And then Washington. So you're really talking about one more game on the schedule for which Oregon ought to feel tested. That doesn't mean they can't give away a game, because they certainly tried to do that against Boise State, tried to do that against Idaho, and looked like they wanted to do it against Michigan State if Michigan State can move the football at all, because Dylan Gabriel threw 2 picks in that game. But against this Ohio State team, you put your best football on film. And I think that's what the College Football Playoff Committee is going to be looking at. Whereas Tennessee, Alabama, is that what's going to happen next week? Are you going to put your best football on film against what we think are top 10-ish teams, but certainly top 25 teams, right? We're talking about both of them. I am very much in a spot where I want to see Alabama or Tennessee beat the hell out of one another. I would really love to know that one of those two teams is good. Like, that's what I'm looking for next week. I'm looking for either Nico Iamaleava or Jalen Milroe to go for 300 and 4 TDs. I'm looking for a defense to try to put the clamps down on an offense. I want to know Who's going to challenge Georgia and what feels like Texas at this point for SEC supremacy? Which leads me to another conversation that we probably need to have, right? We need to talk about Georgia and Texas next week because we still haven't really seen Texas challenged by anybody. Now, that might be because Texas is just that good. It might be. It might very well be. I doubt it, though. I really think that if we're talking about Texas being great, they're going to have to beat Georgia. They're going to have to beat Georgia soundly. They're going to have to beat Georgia not like Alabama beat Georgia, but as like they've had the game in hand the whole time. If they do that, they vault back to number one because it's Georgia. Georgia going into 2 losses would also throw into flux everything we know about the college football playoff, what it's supposed to be. There's real potential for what you can expect from the college football playoff being absolute chaos if Texas somehow beats Georgia next week. And I say somehow, but it's in the realm of possibility. I'm also looking at this and I'm asking myself, are we going to see a Georgia team that we trust? Because we haven't seen a Georgia team we trust since Clemson. That's the thing that's holding them back. We didn't see it against Kentucky. We didn't see it against Mississippi State today. They gave 300 yards passing to Michael Van Buren. Mississippi State, they got destroyed by Toledo, destroyed by Florida. Ugh. Even if you go for 459 and you Brock Vandegrift, Carson Beck, you gotta make that happen. I'm thinking that Carson could go for 300 against this Texas defense, but I doubt it. Like, Pete Kwiatkowski and that defense have been superb. Like, Pete Kwiatkowski is on my list of guys that I think we got to be watching for the Broyles Award this year, based on what that defense has been capable of, especially where that defense has come from. I am also trying to find out whether or not Quintravion Wisner is really that good at tailback, or if I don't know if, man, like he might really be that good. Maybe Georgia can give us a real good read on that, because that offensive line has also been outstanding. When Quinn Ewers has been sacked, it's been his problem. It's been him not understanding what he sees. It ain't been the offensive line letting people get through. Let's see. Let me take a look at the chat. Let's see what we got in the chat. Harbaugh still sucks. Goes to show you can have best recruits for year. Ryan, I see Ryan Midday. That's rich. I don't know who you would have to be your head coach then, dog. Like, that's the thing. I'm sorry. I'm getting texts from upset Ohio State fans that I can't really tell you about right now. And I'm trying to tell everybody that I'm at work, and they know that I'm at work, and they still trying to text me right now. I guess the question I would put for you is, I'm going to ask you about Georgia. I'm going to ask you about Texas. I'm going to ask you about Ohio State. I'm going to ask you about Alabama. I'm going to ask you about Tennessee. Of those teams, who do you trust? All right. Texas is the best team overall, all 3 phases. Maybe. Maybe, dog. Maybe. My cousin Rico, he over here talking about ugly win at Neyland, but I'll take it. I would too. I'd take a win like that at the Generals often. I would do that. As we get ready to talk about the rest of the night, by the way, college football Saturdays have been stretching and stretching and stretching. I can't wait to see what we're making of Colorado, Kansas State. Can't wait to see what we make of what Iowa State, BYU are doing in the Big 12. There's a lot to go look at here. I guess one of the other topics that I wanted to discuss tonight was who is the team in the top 10 that probably should be bounced? And while you can't bounce Miami for being idle, you want to move Clemson up, but you can't because they got that loss to Georgia. I don't have Alabama as a top 10 team, but maybe y'all do. Ole Miss, LSU feels like they're going to move up. The winner of that is absolutely going to be about it. And it looks like, at least right now, that game is going down to the wire. LSU holding the ball. It's 23-16 Ole Miss. Oh, man. This is a year where nobody's elite, man. I mean, I take that. Oregon's got the best win, but they're not elite. You know, Texas looked flawed against Oklahoma. I don't think that they're so flawed that they're going to get beat down by Georgia, but this is becoming a fun year because the top 25 is just going to be all over the map, and knowing that we got 12 teams going on this, we'll see, man. Yeah, let me interact with the chat while I'm in here. All right. Let's see. Buckeye fans, congratulations. Oregon played a great game. The Buckeyes played good. It was an entertaining game. Oh, look, that's an Oregon fan trying to give somebody day props. Good on them. Let's see what we got here. Vandy is on a winning streak. They beat Kentucky. Holy smokes. Yo, Doc Winston Boogie coming through with it, man. Like, I was looking at that game going, are they actually going to pull this out? Vandy, we're no longer your SEC doormat. We're good now. And we went through the top 25, just taking a look at what we haven't talked about already. Notre Dame, Stanford, 49-7. Low-key, Notre Dame's second half of the schedule might get a little bit bumpy, might get a little bit loud. They got Army and Navy on the second half of their schedule, and those teams are combined 11-0. But you did get your best game of the year so far out of Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard, who throws for 229, has 4 total TDs. You rush for over 200 yards. And you beat a Stanford team that looked decent up until they started to play Notre Dame. It's still hard for me to forget that you got beat at home by directional Illinois. But, you know, you run the rest of the table, maybe there's something to that. Let's see. Illinois-Purdue turned into a Big Ten Classic. 2 programs that I just did not expect to go 50-49. Not only went 50-49, but went to do this in overtime. And Luke Altmaier had a game of games, 20 of 34, 3 TDs, 379. This is without Hudson Card at quarterback and without Graham Harrell calling the plays. You putting up 49 points for Purdue. You looking at Ryan Walters going, why didn't we do this all the whole time? Oh, my goodness, look at Devin Mockabee. Devin Mockabee goes for 102 rush yards on 11 carries, man. It came down to a 2-point play that failed. Illinois got the stop against Purdue. They get the win, 50-49. They get to maintain being a top 25 team. Their only loss being to what we think is a good Penn State team. I'm continuing to look down, and I see Pitt is off to its first 6-0 start since 1982. She's never going to see this. Yeah, she's never going to see this. It's talking about Pittsburgh being 6-0. They beat Cal. There's no Jaden Ott. There's not really a whole lot to unpack there, except Pitt was able to beat a Cal team that had an 18-point lead on Miami, and Miami needed to, come back to win that game. That game was also at Berkeley. This game was in Pittsburgh. Still, it feels like it feels like the Panthers are not getting their just due. Because if you're looking at the ACC, you're looking at Miami being undefeated. You're looking at Clemson being terrorizing everybody. They've scored 40 or more in all but one game since they took that 34-3 loss to Georgia. Oh, man. See what else we got in here. Lot of Ryan Day hating here, dog. Why y'all hating on Ryan? He wasn't playing quarterback. Hey, what? A lot of folks out here mad. Travis is hurt. Damn. I just saw that from Rico. Okay, so my cousin Rico coming through. Travis Hunter went in the locker room. We'll talk about Colorado, Kansas State at another date. But I wanted to get here so we could talk about Ohio State. We can talk about Oregon. We could talk about what Alabama, Tennessee was going to be, what Texas, Georgia was likely going to be. And, I mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again. Indiana, Nebraska shapes up to be a really good game. 5-1 versus 6-0. That game is going to be raucous. That game is going to be fun. It's become a low-key, outstanding Big Ten matchup. And if Indiana can get that win, we got to talk about Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon in the same sentence. And if Nebraska can get that win, we got to talk about Nebraska still being in the hunt for a Big Ten championship appearance, which would be phenomenal in what is the magic year for Matt Rule with a true freshman at quarterback. I think we're going to wrap this one out. Okay, all right. See, I simply don't need to see that. I just don't need to see that. Tell you what, we will be back here, and soon as the Colorado-Kansas State game is done, we'll talk more about the top 25. We'll talk more about what needs to happen at Ohio State, if anything. We'll talk more about what is going to have to happen for Texas to not make the college football playoff at this point. Probably recap how Oklahoma fans are feeling about Texas, the Texas loss, because the way I put it earlier to a friend is OU losing feels bad, right? OU losing to Texas feels worse. OU getting stomped out by Texas makes going to church tomorrow real difficult. I think that's a good way to place it, and I think that's a good way to leave it. All right, that is going to do it for this half-hour live episode of the #1 College Football Show. We'll be back a little bit later on with some VOD, talking about the games that are going on late, particularly Kansas State and Colorado. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be back here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday to get you started on your week ahead of what is going to be, I think, a really fun Week 8. We'll probably do a little bit of AP Top 25 analysis. And, of course, you'll have my Top 25 over at Fox Sports as soon as all the games wrap up tonight. I'll see y'all in an hour,